Hello, beautiful people. I hope that wherever you are in the world, that you are doing well and that you are taking care of yourselves. I'm Chris Danker, and this is Let the Adventure Begin. Let the Adventure Begin with Chris Danker podcast. Last weekend, I did a little solo retreat to my hometown of Nebraska City, and I stayed at Whispering Pines Bed and Breakfast. And I've gotten to know the innkeeper, Gina Stavas, pretty well. And in fact, I interviewed her on the podcast, and I'm going to link that interview in the show notes because it was a two-part interview, and it was just such a great conversation that I think if you haven't had a chance to listen to it or you're new to the show, it would definitely be worth going and giving it a listen. And it was a unique weekend in that Gina was not only hosting guests to the bed and breakfast, but three of her cousins were also staying there as her cousin Barbara had just recently lost her 95-year-old mother, and they were going to be doing a celebration of life. And Gina, Barbara, and I are all right around the same age, and we were having a conversation over the weekend, and we're talking about the golden years. And Barbara didn't say this word for word, but the gist of her comment, she just asked the question. She's like, but are they really golden? I mean, think about it. We have more aches and pains. We're losing loved ones. We're empty nesters. We're navigating what it means to live beyond our careers and retirement. And she just kind of posed the question, what's so good about all of these kind of seemingly negatives? And I was contemplating her comments, and I wasn't sure how I felt, because on the one hand, I agreed. There's a lot of transitions happening for those of us at a certain age, and the three of us being postmenopausal adds kind of to that mix. And I just wanted to kind of frame that to look at the fact that yes, they're transitions, they're hard, but they aren't all bad. So first things first, the golden years are defined as happening between the ages of 65 and 80, and beyond that if you're fortunate. These are the years where you have become an empty nester, you have retired more than likely, and you're living life at your own pace and on your own terms. It's linked a lot of times with your finances and making sure you have enough in reserve so that you can live that life of leisure during your so-called golden years. However, there are some things, like Barbara alluded to, that are changes that aren't not so great. And the first is the ever-changing body. Now that the logistics are out of the way on defining what those golden years are, one of the things that we talked about is that, even though we are 6 to 8 years from the official start of the golden years, some of the things that, we talked about are top of mind themes, and they make sense. Because honestly, yeah, it does suck that our bodies can't do all the things that they did pre-menopause and that we were able to do when we were younger. The aches and pains can happen from a sneeze, sleeping wrong, or actually reaching for something. And yeah, that's pretty frustrating, but it doesn't have to be an excuse for not doing things. It's just getting more in tune with your body. So for me, yoga has been a game changer. Sometimes I think that women shy away from yoga because they think it has to be, like a long 30 to 60 minute session, or they think that their bodies just aren't flexible enough for it. Newsflash, this isn't the case at all. Honestly, I do a 10 to 15 minute yoga kind of / stretching session in the morning, and then I do another 5 to 10 minutes before I go to bed. It hasn't magically fixed all the aches and pains, but it has made them less happening less often. Let's just put it that way. That I haven't noticed those sudden aches and pains that can happen from something so easily as sneezing. And one of the things that I am not going to talk about this week, but I want to reference this book by Carolyn Paul. It's called Tough Broad. And it is about, she interviewed and talked to a lot of women who are active outdoors in nature, trying new things in their 60s, 70s, 80s, even into their 90s. And like I said, I'll talk about this book in the future, but it just really emphasizes that it's important for us as women to get our bodies moving, and that we can kind of, even though they don't move in the same way as in our younger years, that isn't a reason to just get sedentary. Secondly, another thing that is brought up as people enter their golden years, or like I said, even previous to them, is that we start losing our loved ones. And that is definitely a downside. The likelihood of losing parents and other loved ones as you reach this time of your life is truly a bummer. I mean, there's no really other way to say it. However, it can be framed differently. I'm 57, and I know I'm incredibly fortunate to still have both of my parents. My mom is 76 and my dad is 84. I text with my dad almost daily and chat with my mom once a week. I try to see them each once a month. They've been divorced since I was 7, so maybe that explains their longevity. But both of them live about an hour away from me, so it's easier for me to be able to see them with some regularity. But I know I can do better. I say I want to see them once a month, but that does not always happen. I remind myself to continue to be grateful for each day that I have with them in this earthly life. So how does that help someone who has lost their parents and other loved ones? Well, honestly, it's to be grateful and to cultivate the relationships with the loved ones that you do have in your life. Reach out to the people you care about the most, and don't get caught up in whether or not they have reached out to you. Just because they don't reach out doesn't mean that they care less. It's that some people are naturally better at connecting. And honestly, you're probably one of them if you're the person who's constantly or with regularity reaching out to loved ones. So again, losing loved ones is a fact of life. And like I said, it sucks. It's a bummer. But just to reframe it, to continue connecting with the loved ones that we still have. A third thing that happens when we start entering the golden years, or we're on the cusp of that, is that we become empty nesters. And when the nest is empty and it's just you and your partner, or maybe it's you on your own, the silence can either be deafening or it can honestly be a rejuvenation. And there's certainly a period of adjustment. It's your new normal, and it's about getting reacquainted with your partner and or yourself. I mean, it's an exciting time, but it can also be scary because you're probably used to having kids around and doing schedules and running them here and there and making meals and figuring out, weekend plans, and you don't have downtime. And then all of a sudden when it comes to a screeching halt because your kids are adults and they're living their own lives, yeah, that can be really kind of nerve-wracking. It's kind of like, oh my gosh, now what do I do? And it's an opportunity to rediscover yourself. You get out of your comfort zone and you try new things, or you can get back in touch with parts of your relationship or parts of yourself that you forgot existed. Again, when we get into that time of our lives when we're parents and that's kind of all we know, we kind of forget about those hobbies and those experiences that we did pre-parenting. And so then when we can come back to them, it's all of a sudden like, oh yeah, I forgot. I really enjoyed that. The last part is, with career, retirement, and then it's like, what do I do now? Complete transparency here. This is a phase that I'm not at yet. I'm about 3 years away from retirement. But I can give you the perspective of seeing my husband in his third year of retirement. He was a journalism teacher for over 30 years. And I think that what happens to a lot of people is that once they retire, they don't know what to do next. So kind of one piece of advice that I have is to set yourself up for that next phase by doing something you enjoy now that can lead up to and then beyond and into retirement. So in addition to my husband being a teacher, he has been a freelance sports journalist for decades. He also started his own sports magazine over 15 years ago, and he publishes it quarterly. He was doing that while he was teaching. And so when he retired, he knew that he could ramp up his freelancing for his sports journalism, and he has. He's been able to cover more sporting events now that he isn't tied to the classroom daily. And honestly, it was important for him to take a gap year that first year of retirement. And I know a lot of people don't have that luxury. We felt, that he could do that because as teachers, he had a solid pension, and then we could combine that with the fact that I was still working full time. So he kind of took that gap year to determine what he wanted to do next. Did he want to ramp up what he was doing with his magazine? Did he want to continue doing more with sports journalism? It was a no-brainer for him to kind of flesh that out and to just kind of discover what he wanted to do. So what I'm saying is that basically start pursuing different things you enjoy that could lead you down a path when you do retire. Maybe you enjoy woodworking or gardening or playing pickleball, volunteering at church, volunteering for other civic organizations. You can start doing them now while you're employed and then devote more time once you retire to those things that you enjoy. So that then all of a sudden when retirement happens, you're not suddenly sitting there going, oh, what do I do now? So the golden years, what I've kind of decided and what I've figured out through, these conversations and through looking at those 4 different aspects that are really, really big when it comes to the golden years, that our body changes, that we lose loved ones, that we become empty nesters, and that, it's like, what do I do once I retire? And those are, big life-changing events, and they seem to just kind of all happen at once, and it can be super overwhelming. But here's the deal. If you focus on your body not working the way it did when you were in your 30s, if you focus on the loss of loved ones only instead of being grateful for the relationships that you still have, and also honoring the ones that you did have, if you fear being an empty nester and you're apprehensive about retirement, then you know what? You're right. The golden years won't feel golden. However, if you pivot and find the silver lining, then you're in for one heck of a fun ride, I think. So I, again, want to thank, Barbara. I want to thank Gina for giving you. They were the inspiration for this episode and that conversation. And I feel like a lot of women that as we are post-menopause and we're facing the golden years coming up next, sometimes it can be really scary and it might not seem like the years are so golden. But like I said, if we pivot, we find the silver lining, it's going to be pretty darn awesome. So until next week, I hope you let your adventure begin. Peace.